Today, I would like to talk about overcoming challenges with building AI products. Briefly about me is I started working on AI way back in 2002, and I initially was an AI researcher and a programmer building systems for 6 7 years. I worked in various countries in Germany, Belgium, Scotland, and then I became an entrepreneur. I built my own startup on machine learning, and over the last 1 year and a half, I've been working on building some products at the same time speaking, and I recently wrote a book. So whatever I'm going to speak about in this talk is basically my own experiences. And so you might disagree, so feel free to disagree with me and feel free to object or have questions. I would look forward to that. So today I will just have, basically I want to talk about 4 challenges that, as when you are thinking about using AI, the first question that most people have is what problems to solve. The next question is how to solve the problems. The third question that is mostly I hear is how to overcome challenges with data gathering. And the fourth question is how to overcome challenges with product development. So these are the 4 major questions that I hear throughout the world, wherever I go, that, okay, these are the 4 questions. I'm trying to answer those 4 questions. Challenge 1, what problems to solve? Now, I show this image, and I think if you guys, I want you guys to remember one image in your life, and from this talk, then it would be the Segway. And I show this image just to show that Segway was considered to be a big success, will be a big success, but it never was. Primarily because it never created the value that it was supposed to create for majority of us people. And that's what happens with any technology. So there are a lot of technologies that are, that considered being hype, but then they never create the real value. So if we want to solve, the first thing is if we think that there's a problem that we want to solve using AI, then it has to think about solving value or creating some value from that technology or whatever we are making. So that's how we start this thing. And most of you perhaps know that that any technology adoption curve goes through this innovators, early adopters, and majority. And I want to show that what problems that you can build or solve to reach the majority, not the early adopter, because to reach early adopter is quite easy. But how to identify the problems that you can actually reach to the majority, and majority will start using it. So, and the answer to that question is build products that create value. Now, what does that really mean? And what do you mean by creating value? And to understand that a bit further, what I say that think about that all the problems that are in this, all the processes that are in this world are made by human. And human mind have some strengths, which are like emotional intelligence and intuitive power. But there are also weaknesses, like we are heavily biased in intuitions and we cannot analyze huge amounts of data. But on the other hand side, machine learning, and I don't want to go into technical talk what is machine learning, most AI or mostly machine learning algorithms are able to deal with a lot of data, can analyze fast, and can analyze massive chunks of data. But on the other hand side, they don't have emotional intelligence, they need to be trained, so there are weaknesses. So if we could find problems where we can combine the strengths of human mind and the strengths of machine learning, that would be the ideal kind of problems where we can solve. And often you guys will think, okay, what are those problems and where are those problems? Like, where are the problems where we would require strengths of machine learning as well as strengths of human mind? And what I came to come down to, there are these basically 5 major conditions that are required that would identify those use cases. The first one is that use case should have a distributed data. It should have a highly quantifiable data pattern. So when I say quantifiable patterns, I mean you can have a quantifiable pattern, you can represent the patterns or the data that is there into something that you can quantify, that you can represent in some form of data. There is already a high human error with those use cases. So there is already existing a high error of the process. Let me, if I will think about a process, or if which I have to think about where are the high human error. Say, let's say we want to make some predictions. Simple case as we want to make a prediction, what would someone buy tomorrow? Yeah, we are not good at doing that. So that has a high human error. There's already large amounts of data that can be generated or collected. And the fifth one is there is low to medium intuitive patterns. So these are the 5 conditions in any use case that satisfy these 5 conditions would be good to solve using machine learning and bringing in the human intelligence. So that's the first way I said. And I don't go into details of like I can give you some examples, but I don't have the time. But these, look at any problem that we are looking for, these should be, in my opinion, the criteria. Now, the second question is that, okay, I have identified those problems. I have seen one problem where I need these kind of criteria. Next, the question is, how do I solve that problem? Like, how can I use machine learning? So here also, this I wrote 5, but it's actually I've given 4 because I just summarized it. Basically, there are 4 steps that you have to follow that I did. Basically, first is make sure that the use case satisfies the criteria. So whenever you're looking at a use case, saying, okay, can I use machine learning in this or not? Think, okay, can I, does that satisfy those conditions? The second is you have to identify the quantifiable patterns. Like, what are those quantifiable patterns? What are those patterns that I can quantify, store, intuitively think about it? You don't need to really think as a human that, okay, can I quantify this thing? Can I quantify this thing? Can I quantify, let's say, in a buying pattern? Can I quantify the weather? Like, quantifying means, can I represent in a form of data? The third step is basically you select the best fit machine learning algorithm. And I will go through that also, like how do you select and what are those selections? And then the fourth step is you gather the data and train the model. So these are the basic, again, at the high level, these are the 4 steps that you have to go through. Now, let me go through a use case and explain you those 4 steps. How do I do that? So the use case that I have picked up is a solar adoption that I'm actually working on now. Is if you want to install solar panels on your rooftop, we are trying to use the satellite images, something like that, where using the satellite images, we are identifying the rooftop edges. The machine would identify that and will give the person, without actually installing the solar panel, get an idea that how much energy he could generate or how much energy he will can save on a given day based on the weather. So that's a use case. The first step is identify the defined use case. The second is we identify the quantifiable patterns. Now, to do that, we can see that we can quantify, we can represent this image in a very machine understandable format because every image is represented in a machine. So the patterns that we can see is that there is an edge, there is an obstacles in the roof. So intuitively, it makes sense that okay, we can represent all of that. That we can quantify the edges, the obstacles in a format. So that's the patterns that we want to recognize. If we want to recognize the edge, the roof, we want to recognize the edges. So that's the second step. The third step is select a best fit algorithm. So in our case, it would be a CNN, which is, again, perhaps I don't know how technical you guys are or not, but let's say assume that this is an algorithm that we will be using. That I will show you at the end of the table that you could perhaps use, but let's say that's the algorithm we choose. And the fourth step is gather the data. So I'll show you a quick video, like how are we doing that. So because the data doesn't exist, so we are actually tagging it human. So human are tagging. So you can see in the screen that people are actually going and clicking the edges with the tool and selecting the edges and creating the data to tag the edges of a roof. So that's the thing. And then what we get is we get something like an annotated data like that. So you can see that a human creating the edge, selecting the edges, and they identify the rooftop edges, and this is an obstacle that we get. And that's the basic 4 steps you follow, and that's for any problem that you're trying to solve. And I also want to show some results that we already have. So after we train the machine with the data that we generated, we already are getting. So the right one is a target, actual data that we want, and the left hand is the predictions. That's the edge of a roof. Perhaps you cannot see it's black and white, but it's basically that's a machine output. So, and it's quite close. We are doing that. So that's the whole process that we're following. So that's the second challenge that I wanted to talk about. The third challenge I want to talk about, how to overcome challenges with data gathering, and that's the biggest challenge that most people talk about. So I think there are 2 kinds of major data that we are talking about. One is a consumer data, and another is a business data. Sometimes the consumer data is already people have. Like I was today talking in a bank in BNP Paribas, and they say we have a lot of data. Okay, so they have a consumer data, but not many people. Most people do not have the data, consumer data. Most companies, startups don't have it. So how do you gather the data? So this is another company that I had in Belgium, which is basically what we did is we have to collect driving data, and the goal was to train the machine to create those patterns of driving behavior, and then based on the driving patterns, understand certain risk profiling and kind of risk of whether this guy is driving good or bad, and create certain models of those. That was the goal of this whole startup. But of course, we need driving data. So how do you collect the data? Like we created an app, okay, that people can click and it will track the driver. But why would someone share his data? It's a private data. So what we did is we create something called the gamification. So we created goals and rewards. Like you can see that there is, if you reach to there was a goal like if you achieve this many score while you drive. So we defined the score based on different parameters. Then you get a free coffee. So when we create this gamified version and incentivize users, we were surprised at almost 5 million driving kilometers we got in in matters of like 4 to 6 months timeline in a country like Belgium, which is really privacy concerned. So what we saw that it incentivized the users. The second thing what you have to do is you have to create the value very transparent and understandable. Um, when you cannot force people to get the data. You have to make them clear why you are getting the data and what you will do with the data. In this case, I was once working in a smart metering project, and there the company wanted to put smart meters, but they were just putting the smart meter in the cell, and they had no visual representation of for the end user, and no one wanted to adopt it. So what we also recommend that you have to create a screen where you can actually the user can see what he consumed energy and how much he will perhaps tomorrow what he can do to save energy. So unless you provide an incentive, no one is going to give you that data. So that's the second thing to do. And the third thing, what we did is you have to educate your users also. And educating is not just about sending an email. In our case, we actually sometimes send physical letter. We even call people, we send physical letters, and we educated that. And it was a very good response. When you send physical letter, people really want to share. So that's another way to do that. And the fourth is you can create a community to create the data. And this is something we are doing in our case with the solar project. All of this data that we're generating is generated by the community. So people, we are telling them, hey, you're doing something good for the society, will help the society, get the data. And that's another way of gathering consumer data. So these are the four major steps that we can follow. In terms of business data, it's more easier because consumer data is more tricky and you have to follow some regulations based on which country or which region of the world you are in. But in consumer data, business data, you can get most of the data to web scraping. So scrap the web, there are Python code and you can just do that. Or you can use some innovative techniques, and I'll talk about some of them in this talk. But the web scraping is, for example, as simple as you just go to the websites and scrap the data and analyze the text. And this is an example I want to show you that it's a snapshot of data that I worked on collecting for some companies. We wanted to collect data, and we could collect the industry, country, the size, the website, the nodes. So we collected quite a lot of data of the company just by web scraping. Even, for example, size of the company, where we wanted to group the companies in different formats. We just went to LinkedIn, and we know the size of the company. So this kind of a lot of data that you can collect just through the web. But the second thing is that innovative. So the second point was that, okay, maybe not all the data is available online. So there are three techniques that I've seen and I've used also in cases. That one is that imagine the problem is that I want to know which companies are moving their offices. And that data is very hard to find because when someone is moving offices, they have a high propensity to buy new things. But no one would tell that. No web we can get. So what we did was you could do is create some marketing technique. So you can create a marketing ad. Say, hey, if you're moving, we'll give you some incentive. Give us your data. So you kind of create some marketing gimmicks to get the data. The second one, what we did was like in another use case, we had to understand that we wanted to know the category of a company, not just the LinkedIn category, but even more refined category, like whether it's a butcher and whether it's a butcher and caterer. And what we saw that if we train a machine model on the name of the company, it was almost 60 to 70% accurate, really categorizing in the right category, just a name. And that was very fascinating that the name itself would define that the category was quite correctly able to identify. And the third was, for example, this was a use case I read it, was a company had to get the revenue, the yearly revenue of another retail store. And there was no way you could get it because online it's very hard to find it. So what they were using was a satellite images, seeing how many cars are parked outside the retail store on a given day, and they know what is the average purchasing power of every customer. So they just multiplied that with the number of cars, the number of days in a year, and they got a rough estimate of revenue. Now, these are the models that you could think intuitively in a smart way. So these are not normal ways of collecting the data, but there are other ways that you have to go through and find, okay, how can I collect the data? So that's the things that I said, that how can you overcome some of the challenges with gathering data. And the fourth challenge is how to overcome the challenge of product development. Now, I mean, in the beginning, I did said you that I will talk about what are the algorithms to choose. So first of all, when you're thinking about product development, you have to also select the algorithms. And I know it's not the best way to do that, but I just wanted to show that I created this table that these are the different neural network algorithms and what are the quantifiable data that we have and what we want to achieve. Based on that, we can select what is the neural network that we have. So there is already not only this is I have done it, but there are also many people you can easily find in the web who have said, okay, if this is a condition and that is a condition, then this is the algorithm to say. So that's the first step of product development. But the next step is a bit different that I follow normally, and this is, of course, the problem is a lot of people around the world is very expensive. The hiring data scientists is expensive. So what I'm following now for the solar project is I'm using the community to build a product. So rather than saying, okay, I hired someone, I'm also like creating a community of 50 students in the solar project who are building, taking up different tasks and building the product. And as you can see that it works really well because the students are very driven. They love what they are doing. They want to learn, but at the same time, they are also they're creating the data. They're building the product, and the results are almost, to my knowledge, was better than anything that I've seen on low resolution images. So that's the approach that we're doing. And in the right-hand side, I've showed you some of the protocols that we have to follow. Like, of course, you have to fix some processes. But by following this kind of community-driven development, you are highly reducing the cost of development. So that's one way you can actually, even if you don't have money, you can create and build products. And it's kind of, I can say it works quite well. And because there's a large pool of students who are willing to work and want to learn in real-world products. Actually, I did write an article about it too, because I find it a very fascinating part of the potential of communities and machine learning for good. So if you guys ever want to go and check it, you can check that. But what I'm kind of saying is that, how can you build products using the community? And that is one of the ways to overcome the challenges of product development. So that's all I wanted to talk about. I hope I was in time, actually quite on time. So, and this is finally I wanted to just say that I recently a month ago published a book, and if any one of you guys are interested to read and more in details about what I said, I do talk about all of those issues in a bit more details. And yeah, I'm happy to feel free to connect me on LinkedIn, and I'm very happy to hear questions if you guys have any.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much for these great insights. And yes, we have questions for sure. Let me check. One is like more an organizational one, like where can I get the slides? So you will get the slides next week with the replays. I'm assuming no. And then another one is like, again, from Tao, she writes, if I have a great business idea without technology background, learn myself or look for a tech co-founder or both?
I mean, if you are, I think it is, I would say that if your background is business, then you can try to find a tech co-founder. But while you are looking for a tech co-founder, you can also try to learn these things, because it will not take you a lot of time to learn it, because a lot of the technology development has become a commodity, almost becoming a commodity. So you can easily find students very easily who would be happy to gain some experience and work with you to build some prototypes. So that's the way we can go. You don't necessarily have to find a co-founder. You can just find a student, hey, work with us and build a product, something like that.
Okay. Yeah, I think then the next question is from Jonathan goes into a similar direction. I'm assuming I'm just showing you on this stream. He wrote now, by now the tech giants like imagine Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, Google are collecting lots of data. How to access other, I would say, open brackets, open source? Your thoughts. You wrote some stuff already about web scraping, public data, but yes. What is there like?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of open data also, but I don't normally work with open data because often I haven't worked on any project on open data. So I will just be honest to you guys, and I'm not sure how good quality or how useful those data is. I am working on, mostly what I've worked is either I have myself gone on and got the data, or the methods that I have followed. That's the way I have worked always, and it has worked till now quite well. So But you can also check there are initiatives around the world called Open Data where they are giving APIs and opening the data for people to use it.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. I think, yeah, are there any questions, comments by now? Now you have the opportunity to ask him, or you have to buy the book, this is up to you, or both. So yeah, any questions? If not, then yes, I have definitely one. So you and yourself, you have a technical background or a business background?
Both, actually. So my background is technical. So I used to be programmer. I was programming even a couple of years ago, and now I do review codes. I don't actually code because I find the students way more efficient and better than me writing code. But since I've also built companies, I've built 6 startups, so that makes it also have me the understanding of business use cases, understand how business works. So I can say that I have that both the backgrounds. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, quite impressive. What are your next plans? What are beside now you wrote the book, and now what's next?
I think I'm driven a lot by building products. That's always is something very inspiring, and spreading the word, which also helps me a lot. So like today I was speaking at BNP Paribas. Monday I'm speaking in another Pi Data conference, and then I fly to Lviv. I'm speaking Lviv. Then a few days later I go to Bosnia. Then I'm going to Barcelona. Then I'm in Berlin actually to speak in a data science conference. So I'm kind of I'm driven by sharing what I know a lot, and also building great products for the society, and rather than just for making money. So that's something is very interesting to me.
Okay. Yeah, thanks so much. So last call, if you don't have question now, or do you too shy, more than happy. I believe that you can follow up or write him an email, reply to him. You find him on all like LinkedIn, Twitter, and so on. It was a great pleasure having you with us, closing together with me now the bottish 9 already. So we had 4 great speakers. So yeah, wishing you all the best, and hopefully see you soon again.
Cool. Thanks a lot.
Online or offline.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for listening. Thanks. Bye.
Absolutely. So have a nice evening.
Thanks. God bless.
Yeah, thanks.